Are you ready to live life to the full? Are you ready to rise up and live a life of honor? Are you ready to boldly step into a life of courage? This is the Manlihood ManCast.
Hey, welcome to the Manlihood ManCast. I'm your host, Josh Hatcher. Today we've got a special episode for you. It is an interview with writer-director Caleb Combs and my son Abe Hatcher, who's a comedian. And we're going to talk about the best guy movies of all time, some of our favorite guy movies. So I hope you enjoy. We'll be right back after this.
Hey man, I see you. I see your fire going out. I see your marriage barely holding on. I know you're broke, wore out, and at the end of your rope. I've been there. It sucks. Sucks the spark right out of you. Till all you have is a pile of wet wood. It feels like it's never gonna burn. I can't fix your problems. I can't make her love you again. I can't lose 50 pounds for you or fill your bank account. But I can remind you of who you are. I can share some of my fire. I can help you make a plan to get your life back on track. So let's go. Let's do this. Let's reignite our lives. There's a lot at stake. No one wants their marriage to end in divorce. No one wants to wallow in despair or to the dark places that follow. So let's do it. Let's reignite our lives. Let's reignite our passion, our marriage, our health, our career, our dreams, our mindsets. Get reignite today.
So guys, let me introduce you to these guys. You will see with the great big white blue snowball microphone is Caleb Combs wearing a Toronto Maple Leafs hat. Are you really into the Toronto Maple Leafs?
I'm into this hat, certainly.
And then here
and I'm into Toronto. Yeah.
That's what happens when you wear a hat.
And then here with the COVID-19 hairstyle is my son Abe, who is a comedian. You can follow him on YouTube at Abe Hatcher. And,
if you find me under all this hair.
Yeah, if you can find him under all the hair. And so Abe and Caleb are my resident movie buffs, and we have lots of awesome conversations about movies. And I thought that it would be kind of fun for us to do a podcast, maybe talk about the top guy movies of all time. So kind of have a little bit of a list in my head. I know Caleb's got a little bit of a list, and I think Abram has...
I have a general idea of some of movies.
He knows a few movies. So I thought maybe we could kind of go through and kind of spitball here and have some fun with that. So Caleb is, when I call him my resident movie buff, I know he's also a writer. He loves to make movies and plays, and I know you kind of want to direct. So I think there's some kind of cool aspirations there, and we can kind of have some fun with all this, I thought. So let's get started. Why don't we discuss maybe some qualifications for what makes a good guy movie? You guys, any thoughts on that? Is there
So the parameters that I was given for this assignment were basically top 5 guy movies, or as I've written here, top 5 dude moves.
Top 5 dude moves.
The moonwalk. That's
So I didn't want to just reach into the pile of action movies and grab a handful of those, just like action movies with cool fight scenes. I love action movies with cool fight scenes, but there are a lot of different kinds of movies out there that I wanted to maybe try to highlight. So I set myself sort of a two-pronged approach to this, and the first prong was sort of go across all sorts of different genres and try to find good movies that are sort of centered around men, and we are not lacking for options for movies about men. So,
and this great guy movie. Actually,
it's just a great movie. Period.
It actually is. I haven't seen the new one yet, but the old Little Women is actually a great movie. Actually, there are themes of masculinity in the movie, so hey, I'm not gonna knock it down. But
the new one is so good, but it's not on this list.
That's okay.
and the second part of my approach was try to find movies that feature men sort of demonstrating qualities of manhood or masculinity that I admire and that I aspire to.
Awesome. That's awesome. So, why don't we get right down to it? Who wants to go first with maybe the first one? Do we want to go like number one being the top, and start at that, or do we want to start number one being the last, or is it ranked?
I kind of have an order. They're not ranked, but I have an order here.
Cool.
I kind of want to approach these in.
So why don't you go ahead and start with your first suggestion for us then on guy movies. We can talk about it and what we like about it.
Okay. It's one that I know you like because you're the one who recommended it to me. It's a movie called Warrior from 2011, directed by Gavin O'Connor.
Yep.
Gavin O'Connor has directed a couple of these sports movies, including Miracle, and also a movie that just came out recently. It's called The Way Back, which is a movie about an alcoholic basketball coach that's not actually about basketball. And in a similar way, Warrior is a movie about MMA fighters that isn't actually about MMA.
Right. It's great. Oh my gosh. That was actually top of my list too, so I'm kind of glad that we both have that.
I haven't seen it.
You need to watch it.
Okay.
I think it's on
very
Hulu
good
right now.
Is
so
it?
yeah.
Yes, it's on Hulu and on Amazon Prime. If you have that, you can watch it there. It's a story about two brothers and their relationship with each other and their sort of individual relationships with their father. It's about men who feel like they failed each other in some ways and also feel like they have been failed by each other. It's about the relationships we have with our families and how much a part of us they are, even if we don't particularly like our families that much. They are part of the basic building blocks of who we are as people. And whether they drag us down or lift us up is entirely up to our own individual choices.
Definitely. And it also, as a guy movie with fight scenes.
The fight scenes are terrific.
The MMA scenes are amazing, and so
they're very intense, very, very, pretty brutal for a PG-13. And I know if you trust IMDb trivia, both Joel Edgerton and Tom Hardy, who play the main brothers in the movie, both got pretty seriously injured during some of the fight scenes. So they were pretty tough.
Yeah, it's filmed in a way where it's very realistic too. Like in terms of the fighting, looks more like you're actually watching an MMA match than in the same way, kind of I guess that.
The Rocky movies, maybe.
Which it kind of has that same realism to the fight scenes, which is really sweet. My favorite part of the movie, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but at the end of the movie, in the biggest kind of last fight scene, which again is not about the fight, which I think is kind of cool. It's not about the fight, but the fight is happening. There is this song that's playing by a band called The National, and it's just like, you know how like at the end of a song sometimes they'll I call it ragging it out, but I don't know exactly what the official term is, where like they'll just kind of bang and make noise.
Yeah. They're just everything falls apart.
Yeah, everything kind of falls apart. So that happens in the song at the and then instead of that being it falling apart, it swells like that, and it just so this movie ends with this big, long, cacophonous swell that just builds and builds, and it adds this tension because you're seeing what's happening on the screen between these two characters, and what you're seeing is it's like a love, that family love, that brotherhood. It
adds the tension, but it's also like a big sort of cathartic, sort of big scream of release of that tension too.
Yeah.
The ending makes me cry.
It brings resolution, I mean, it's a powerful movie. You need to watch it, definitely.
I'll watch it. I will watch it. I love fighting. Fighting is fun.
You want to fight?
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, definitely. That's on my list too. So we have a combo, a crossover right there, which is awesome.
Yep.
Abe, what about you? What's one of the movies you think that you would recommend?
I mean, 100% the Rocky movies. Like that, if you ask any guy what their favorite manly, it's Rocky.
Do you include the Creed movies?
I mean, yes and no, because they're different in themes, but in terms of fighting and just being a movie with fighting, yeah. I mean, like Creed
I-
2, especially more than the first one.
Oh, I honestly, I think Creed, the first one, might be my favorite in the franchise.
Right.
It's the sort of father and son legacy thing. It's the same thing that gets me about Warrior. It's that.
I love, first of all the Rocky movies are amazing. One of the things that always blows my mind is when you think about how great they are, and I mean, the lead character is Sylvester Stallone, obviously playing Rocky, and he's kind of not the brightest guy, and he doesn't.
Sylvester Stallone.
Rocky, and when Sylvester Stallone talks, his voice isn't that much different than Rocky, and so when you watch it, in my mind, I have this image of who Sylvester Stallone is, and it's kind of the dumb brute with a big heart that's a good fighter, right? That's how I picture Sylvester Stallone, because having grown up on Rocky movies, which, by the way, was one of the first movies I watched, and my mom and dad told me that I was I think it might have been like, I don't remember which Rocky movie it was, but they took me to the theater and it was playing, and I got all excited and I guess punched the lady in the row ahead of me in the back of the head. Yeah. So.
How old were you?
I don't know.
Rocky's setting a bad example for our
17.
children.
So, but
How old were you? 35.
I was 35. Yeah.
Just a baby.
But so that in my mind, that's my picture of Sylvester Stallone, is this dumb boxer. But honestly, like, he wrote that movie, right?
He did?
Yep, he wrote the movie. He wrote that, and the legend goes that he went around trying to sell that movie to a bunch of different studios, and they were interested in the script, but they said, "Who's going to play Rocky?" And he said, "Me." And they said, "No, we will. Like, we need a real actor to play this part." And so he just took it and gathered up a group of friends, raised the money, and like friends, like professionals, but like raised the money and then produced it independently, and then it won a bunch of Oscars and spawned like this huge legacy. So
since and it's funny that you said the Rocky movies, because like I thought that I was going to cheat by making, like, in my top 5 the Rocky movies counts for. It's one, but it's all of them. You know, like, I love every one of them.
This is our list. We don't who makes the
who needs
rules?
anything else? But there's always that question of which one is the best, which one is your favorite. So let's ask that question. Abram, favorite Rocky movie?
Favorite Rocky movie?
And we can count the Creed movies in that if you want.
Jeez. I'd say either Creed 2 or maybe Rocky. Was it 4 where he fought the Russian guy? It was 4. Okay,
that was 4.
It was either Rocky 4 or Creed 2. Just because it feels like there's a lot more at stake in those ones than there is at the other ones. It just feels bigger to me, and I just like that.
How about you, Caleb? I think you mentioned that your favorite might be the Creed.
I mean, some people will draw a distinction between favorite and best. I tend to go with favorite being the metric by which I judge things. I honestly, I think it is Creed. Full disclosure, I think I've seen all of them, but I haven't seen a lot of them in a long time.
That's fair.
But yeah, Creed, it's the one to me beyond the first one that sort of feels the most personal, which is a weird thing to say for the 7th movie in a series, but you know, Ryan Coogler, who made that movie, grew up on the Rocky movies and like watched them with his dad and had this idea for Apollo Creed's son coming in and being involved, and the relationship between Donnie and Rocky in that movie, the sort of mentorship feels really special to me, and I think that's probably my favorite one. It's the one I sort of come back to the most.
Yeah, I would definitely. I think it is an excellent movie. I think my favorite. Okay, so I have 2 parts to my favorite thing. First of all, I love both Creed movies. I do love them very much. My favorite is always, like, when I think of Rocky, I always think of fighting the Russians, which is 4. I mean, that, like, at that time in history, when that came out, like, we were all afraid of Red Dawn. Like, we were Wolverines all the way. All of us little boys were playing, you know, army in the backyard with our G.I. Joes and our guns without the orange tips. Sorry, boys, that's what we had. We could totally have robbed a bank back then, and nobody would have said a word about it.
I mean, they probably would say, "Hey, you're a bunch of kids. What are you doing in a bank?"
Yeah. I also think maybe like the police might have had something to say about it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, they wouldn't have known that they weren't real guns back then. So, but we were always fighting the Russians. Like, it was always what we did. That was our cultural heritage. So that movie just sinks in like with this, nostalgia for me of feeling like I was saving the world. But my favorite Rocky moment of all time is actually from my least favorite Rocky movie. There is a scene, and I
Is it 5?
I think it's 5.
I think 5 is the one where he doesn't fight at all.
And maybe it's not 5. Maybe it's Rocky Balboa, where he talks to his son, and his son is played by Milo
Ventimiglia.
Yeah, that guy, Jack from This Is Us. And he has that talk with him in the street about.
Are you talking about the speech?
Yeah,
getting knocked down.
Yeah,
I think that's 5.
Is that in 5 or is that in?
That's Balboa. That's Rocky Balboa.
Okay. Well, my least favorite movie is 5. But that is my favorite Rocky moment of all. Like, that speech is like everything that every father wants to say to his son.
It's like the ultimate motivational speech. Yeah.
Yeah. Get off your butt and do something. I told my son.
Okay.
Thanks, Dad.
I'm off my butt.
Oh, I got you. So Rocky movies on the list for me as well as you in terms of favorites of all time.
Definitely.
Did we throw off your list with that? Was that on your list?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
But it's a good call. Yeah.
Cool. What's next on your list, Caleb, of favorite movies?
My
Favorite guy
list.
movies.
So a genre I have within the last couple of years really discovered that I enjoy very much is a genre I call adults who are good at their jobs. To paraphrase the Blank Check podcast, which is a movie podcast I listen to all the time. And most of the time they're based on true stories or like biographical stories of real people. Examples of this, there are a couple Spielberg movies in there like Lincoln and Bridge of Spies. Ford versus Ferrari from last year is another example of a good one. James Mangold's movie. Just movies about like people who are good at their jobs, who do the right thing in the circumstances they're given. And one of my favorites of those is my next pick. It's Sully from 2016, directed by Clint Eastwood, about the pilot of the plane that landed in the Hudson River in, I believe, January of 2009. It was called The Miracle on the Hudson. Chesley Sully Sullenberger. He's played in the movie by Tom Hanks, and it's a really interesting performance because in the movie, and from what I understand in real life, Sully is just this. He is the picture of calm competence. It's just in this 1 in a million circumstance where a bird flies into the engine of the plane, the plane.
Was it a Canada Goose?
I am not certain.
If it was, I'm making you take off your Toronto Maple Leafs hat because I'm telling you, those Canadians have got it out for us.
Sabotage.
Gosh, stupid Canadians. I'm just kidding.
I will not stand. I will not stand for a slander against the nation of my nephew.
That's why you're sitting down.
But just the confidence and the ability and the experience of decades of piloting took over, and he managed to safely land this plane in the river in January. So not ideal circumstances, but it's certainly better than crashing into a building. It's certainly better than the disaster that it could have been. And, everyone hails him as a hero for this, but throughout the movie you see him struggling with the fact that it happened at all, and you see him having nightmares about it and sort of having flashbacks to it. Sort of, he didn't do it to be a hero. He did it because it was his instinct, and it was the thing that would save the most people in the terrible circumstance he was put in. And Clint Eastwood loves to make movies about a lone hero standing up against the system. So there's a kind of plot like that in the movie that I'm not entirely sure is accurate to how it happened in real life, but sort of the board that oversees aviation, at least in the movie, runs an investigation that almost ends up turning into like an inquisition. And the way that he explains himself to that hearing, Tom Hanks, it's such a really great understated performance because he shuts them down without ever raising his voice. It's terrific. It's a really terrific movie, and it's like there's also a scene where you see the plane crash, you see it go in, you're on the flight. There's a sequence, and it's watching it in the theater was one of the most intense things I've ever experienced in a movie theater. And after it's all said and done, and this is based on history, so I don't really feel like it's a spoiler, but when they're all in the hospital, Sully is sitting in the hospital sort of waiting room, and someone comes in and tells him that all of the passengers survived. No one died. There were no serious injuries. And he breaks down, and I broke down too. A theme with these might be that I cry in these movies. I don't know, but
it's all good. Nothing wrong with that.
But it's an extreme, like, it's a release of that tension and just an acknowledgement of like, I did my job and everybody's okay. It's a great movie. If you haven't seen Sully, I highly recommend it.
I'm really familiar with the story of when it all happened, but I haven't seen the movie. I do know I have several friends who are
quality mustache work by Aaron Eckhart too, by the way.
Cool.
Just a great stash.
I love stashes.
I know several pilots, like in real life. In fact, my best friend when I was in school was he had his pilot's license before his driver's license. And one of the things they drill into you, and we used to go up and like rent a plane in Wellsville and like fly it like to Bradford and get a hamburger at the restaurant and then fly back. So it'd be like $100 hamburger just for the fun of it. And so here's these two 16-year-old kids in an airplane flying over their house. Like we're doing circles over the house. My little brother tramping messages in the snow to us. And but the thing about it is every pilot that I know, they have that calm, cool, like nothing's gonna get them riled up, like nothing, like because you can't, like you're literally in a car in the sky, and a gust of wind or a bird can knock you out. So like that's definitely like a part of their. I think it has to be in your personality to be able to do that. Like you've got to be.
It's personality. I also think it's experience. Again, that. Like I was talking, like he had Sully, not your friend, but Sully had decades of experience behind him to know how to handle a situation like that. Obviously, he'd never been in that exact situation before, but yeah, it's something that comes from experience, and
it's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Abe, you got a movie? Which one of your movies?
I got a movie. It's a little small movie. You might have heard about it. It's called Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump.
Another Tom Hanks joint.
Yeah, we're in a Tom Hanks kind of area here, aren't we?
Wow.
I mean, he's a very good man, right?
I don't know if he is or not. I don't know him personally.
Based on everything I've heard, he's everything you think he would be.
See, that could mean lots of things, though, because some people think some really weird things about Tom Hanks, but we're not getting into that.
He is the nice guy people expect him to be, is what I mean.
Oh, okay. Okay, so Forrest Gump, why is that on your list of manly movies? What do you think?
I mean, because the whole movie is about, like, a man and, like, his whole journey through life and how he's, like, he may not know what he's doing half the time, but he always just keeps moving forward, and it keeps on keeping on. And, like, he ends up being, like, one of the most successful men in the world just by living his life and doing good,
and showing his butt to the president.
Who doesn't want to do that?
I mean, I don't care what president it is. It would be fun. I'm just saying.
I mean, you get ice
Who
cream. You get ice
doesn't-
cream.
You did get ice
It's
cream.
a fair trade. It's a fair trade.
I will be totally honest. I've never seen that movie all the way through, so maybe now's the time.
Really?
Now that we have time.
You're
yeah.
like the movie guy.
Yeah,
You
everybody's
haven't
got
seen-
blind.
Didn't he buy
Every-
you the copy of Forrest Gump that you have?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe he did.
No, we had that.
I also bought somebody a copy of Hook, and I hate that movie. So
I love that movie. Bangarang.
okay, cool.
That is a quote from the movie.
Anyway.
That is a fake word they say in that movie.
Okay, so
The
Forrest Gump.
30th best Spielberg movie.
What else? Anything else on Forrest Gump? You think it's it's a manly movie, definitely. I think there's something to that quiet confidence that he has.
And there's Vietnam. There's explosions.
Oh yeah, and he but he also
He saved his entire platoon.
yeah,
Like
that is pretty
there's
cool.
all sorts of crazy stuff that happens in that movie. That could be construed as any kind of manly.
And he loves
you know?
one woman for his entire life, no matter what.
Even though she's a terrible person.
She totally is a terrible person.
Yeah, that movie is not very kind to Jenny, but
Well, I mean, Jenny's not very kind, so.
anyway.
It's all good. Cool. So if the Rocky movies counted as one, I'm also going to say the Lord of the Rings movies is on my list.
Ooh,
All
I
of them?
love those.
Good
Including The
call.
Hobbit?
Including the Hobbit? Okay.
Including The Hobbit. And I know a lot of people are...
Less good call.
That's okay. I love them. I love them. I
know,
feel like
I know.
I feel like those.
There's good stuff in there. I will honestly say that I think Martin Freeman as Bilbo Baggins is like the best casting choice
Yeah.
in the world.
I feel
He's
like
so good.
I feel like the Lord of the Rings movies has all of them just have this, and I think the most manly of all of them in terms of movies is probably Return of the King. I feel like that that's Aragorn's story, and he's kind of that. The whole way through, he's not coming into his true identity, his true calling until that, and so up until that point, you're identifying with Frodo, you're identifying with Sam, or even Gandalf, who's kind of featured. At, the Two Towers is kind of his story, and in that last one, you get Aragorn's story where he is stepping into what he's meant to be, and I love that. I think it's a cool moment where you just see him from this quiet guy who is
Edgelord.
conflicted to edgelord.
Yeah. Well, because he is.
Okay, we're ready to go here. I'm the king.
Yeah,
He goes by the nickname Strider. Like, come on. Like,
we're talking a lot about legacy with some of these
Yeah.
because that's him sort of embracing his legacy and sort of embracing where he comes from.
True. And he almost was almost ashamed of it. It felt like.
well, yeah, because it's from a failed line of royalty.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a really good concept there. That.
The sword was broken. It has been remade.
Yeah. There's some really good manly thoughts there about because I like to think that you had a good dad. I know I have a good dad. I know Caleb, you've got a good dad, but I know that a lot of men did not. And do
Not everybody has a good dad. Not everybody has a good male example to follow.
And so I think a lot of even with a good dad, even with the best dad, we all still have to work through the weaknesses of our fathers and those that came before us to kind of come into
Yeah,
our own.
because-
like Boromir and Faramir.
Yeah,
They had the worst dad.
Oh,
Like that.
Yeah.
That was their whole story, was about them and their dad.
And one of them went the same path and the other went the other, even though at the end he kind of fought for redemption. Yeah, that's definitely a good thing.
and I lost my train of thought. You're
That's
gonna have to
okay.
edit that out. But
It's all good. Or I
But-
can leave it in to make fun of you. It's all good.
oh, I know what I was going to say. You said not everybody has the best dad. Even with the best dad, you're going to have to sort of sift through the mistakes that your dad made because everybody makes mistakes. I feel like that's important to acknowledge, is that no one is the perfect parent. No one has the perfect situation, and you're going to have to at some point realize that you are your own person and that the changes you need to make to be the best person, man, woman, person you can be, come from you. And you can learn from the examples that your parents have set, but you ultimately have to find who you are on your own.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. 150%. My math isn't so great. Awesome. Caleb, what's next on your list?
Next on my list, I told you I'm sort of rooting around the entire genre bucket here.
Sure.
Here's one that I don't know if people have seen. It is a film from 1952, directed by Akira Kurosawa, called Ikiru, which in Japanese means to live.
So
I know
this is Kurosawa. He makes mad films. I'm quoting the Bare Naked Ladies.
Like Kurosawa, I make mad films. Yes. Okay, I don't make films, but if I did, they'd have a samurai. And that's what most people know Kurosawa for, is who know him, they know him for samurai movies, like Yojimbo or Seven Samurai, Rashomon, sort of historical, like period Japanese movies. But he also made a good number of contemporary crime thrillers, like High and Low and Stray Dog and The Bad Sleep Well, and a couple of contemporary dramas, like the one I'm talking about, Ikiru. It's sometimes called Kurosawa's version of It's a Wonderful Life, and kind of. It's about a Japanese bureaucrat who has spent decades of his life basically wasting his time doing busy work in a public works office, and never takes a sick day. Just sort of spends his life, doesn't live it, but spends it in this office. And then one day he is diagnosed with stomach cancer and learns that he only has a few months to live, and he realizes that he has essentially wasted his life and not lived. And so throughout the course of the movie, he finds that he sort of experiments with different ways to feel like he's living his life. He finds a number of different people to spend time with to try to figure out what that means, and eventually he finds a purpose for his last few months on Earth. And it's a movie about basically not waiting for the right moment, because the right moment is never going to come. You have to make the moment to make a difference, to make a change, to do something worthwhile. You have to make that moment now if you can, because the next one isn't guaranteed. It's very emotional. It's very honest. It's dark, but not like overbearing or gritty. It made me cry, which again, it's the third one on my list that has made me cry. It's gentle without being overly sentimental. It's so good. It's a very, very, very good movie, and I highly recommend checking out Ikiru. Ikiru. Yes.
Awesome. Where can you see that? That sounds like it's going to be obscure and hard to find, huh?
It's not that obscure or hard to find. I believe you can rent it from iTunes, Amazon, Google Play, all your usual streaming services. Streaming, I think it's on Canopy and the Criterion channel.
Cool. Awesome. We'll have to check it out. I am not watched a whole lot of old movies like that, especially, foreign films. So I think it's kind of a cool deep dive to go down to, and that sounds like a good movie to do.
I think Bong Joon-ho, who directed Parasite last year, had an interview last year where he was talking about non-English language films, and he said something like, if you can climb over the 1-inch barrier of subtitles, an entirely new world of movies gets opened up to you. So
Abe likes subtitles.
I like watching movies with subtitles.
Actually, I like even English movies with subtitles because I can't hear
Yeah.
anything anymore. So.
Yeah, I usually leave them on just to make sure I don't miss anything.
Especially if
Yeah.
somebody has like an English accent or like Australia, I'm like, what did they say? What did they say? So subtitles, yeah, all about it. All about it. Awesome. Abe, do you have anything else in your
I do.
what's that?
I mean, I didn't have this planned, but Caleb just reminded me. He mentioned that movie was like It's a Wonderful Life, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. I love it so much. But I'd also consider it like a manly movie.
Definitely.
'Cause, I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Oh yeah.
it's about like this guy's life and the choices he made and like the sacrifices that he made and like in the end how his choices mattered and how it influenced the people around him and how like that can benefit him, you know? Like there's all sorts of little things in there, and it's really great.
We always think of the movie at Christmas time because it's been traditionally played.
Yeah.
But it is.
It is absolutely a Christmas movie, but
Yeah, oh, it definitely is. I mean, so is Die Hard, but
Careful. Somebody's gonna.
we're gonna get
no,
Somebody's gonna.
no, it
spear you.
is.
It
Can
is.
we just get a consensus here?
So is
it is a
Gremlins.
Die Hard is a Christmas
So
movie.
is Gremlins. Gremlins is a Christmas.
Oh,
movie.
yeah.
Gremlins is.
Oh, yeah.
A Christmas
So
movie.
but yeah, It's a Wonderful Life. So I do have one question about that movie though. Why can George Bailey not kiss? Have you ever noticed he just like violently rubs his
he's just
face against? He just like
And
ah,
he just like shakes people all the time.
like I love you. Like let me smash my face on you.
Well, Abe brought up him shaking people all the time. It's interesting because that movie is like George Bailey is a good person. He is fundamentally a good person, but he's not always nice. He's not always smart with the way he does things. It feels like a real guy, you know?
Yeah, he's got and there's so many lessons in that movie too. But he's got this it's just there's an intensity leading up to that breakdown of his, where you know, and honestly, you know, I mean, I know like podcasts are one of those things where someone could be listening or watching this right now, or like in a couple months, or a couple years. But what's happening as it's being recorded is this global pandemic COVID-19 thing. Everybody's in lockdown, and everybody's blood pressure and stress level have gone up. And I feel like, I'm not gonna, you know, grab my wife and shake her. You know, I mean, she'd hurt me, so I don't.
Listen to me.
Listen to me. But I feel like, definitely, I think a lot of people may actually be able to identify with the circumstances that are pushing George Bailey to the edge at a time like this when, you know, there's financial crisis, there's all of those stressors. So,
And he's trying to do the right thing always, but it's not working out for him.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing, is that sometimes the right thing can still cost you. I mean, he could totally have thrown his uncle under the bus, but he didn't throw his uncle under the bus. And, you know, the end of the movie, which this is an old enough movie that it doesn't matter if we spoil it. I mean, things
Everybody's
work
seen
out
it.
for George.
Yeah,
Things work out
everybody
for
comes
George.
and they give him money.
And they
say
all
Merry
pitch in and
Christmas.
take care of him. And I'm going to tell you right now, I can't tell you how many times in my life I've been in those moments where, like, how in the world are we going to get through this? How are we going to get through this financial problem? How are we going to do this? And you know, I mean, I believe that there's some providence at work. I believe that God kind of guides a lot of that. But he uses friends. And I can't tell you how many times there's been an envelope of cash when I needed it, or groceries on the front porch when I needed it, you know? And those things come when you invest them when you have it. You know, the reason that all those people did that for George is because George did the right thing for them when they needed it.
Yeah.
And then it came back later, you know? And so, I don't know, just something to think about. Like, you know, people always freak out when it feels like the world has come to an end and nobody's there for them. Where were you when things were good? Were you there for them? Because it does come back, you know? What you put out there comes back to you.
Also, you know, what you mentioned about the circumstances of COVID-19 and the sort of panic that we all have about how are we going to get through this. It's the same way we always get through everything. We get through it together.
Yeah. Well, together, also not together.
Well,
Like, kind of together.
collective effort. Not necessarily being physically together. Yeah.
Right. Awesome. That's a great movie, Abe. I'm glad that's on your list.
It is a great
One of my
movie.
favorite movies of all time.
It's a really great movie.
We watch it every Christmas at least once. Oh, okay. So I love it in black and white. Oh, but
You mean the way you should watch it?
yeah, but I'm just gonna tell you, there's something about when you've watched a movie, the same movie your entire life in black and white, and then you see a good colorized version of it, you're like, it's like a new movie.
It was crazy.
It's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, quick another thoughts on that movie that I think totally get ignored.
Mm-hmm.
That movie has some things happening in the movie that were not happening in movies then. The conversation with the angels with the animated like galaxies lighting up. Like nobody was doing stuff like that at that time. That movie was made, what was it?
Well,
1946.
yeah.
I love that
40s.
he knows every detail about everything.
He's a genius.
I love it.
He's a special
Caleb is
Overstating
boy.
things a little bit, guys.
What did you say?
He said he's a special boy.
Special man.
Special man.
So
I'll take boy.
So, that was interesting. And there's also like this one scene where he's talking about his suitcase, and he stretches his hand out like this.
It was this one.
And there's so the camera captures his hand out blurred, and then there's a freeze frame, and then you cut to the conversation with the angels. And
freeze frame.
And that is not a new technique. They had the technique back then, but nobody used
It didn't.
as a creative
Frank Capra
storytelling.
didn't invent freeze framing. No.
No, but it wasn't used as a part of the creative storytelling like that. At least not in a way that, like when you watch that movie, it almost makes it feel kind of modern, and that they used these simple special effects in a way that nobody was doing it. And so, I don't know. It just is. It almost has this. The movie holds up today because of that kind of inventive take on things, I think. So you're a black and white purist, huh?
Most definitely. Yeah. Well, the thing is, these things were specifically composed for black and white. Like color choices they made in costume and set design were specifically chosen for black and white because of the way they would show up on black and white film. But I also acknowledge that I'm a snob and a weirdo. So, watch whatever you want to watch however you want to watch it. Just know that I'll be silently judging you. If that matters to you.
Oh, it's all good. Caleb, what else is on your list, bud? What do you got? Have we hit
Okay.
Have we hit your 5 movies yet?
Nope, this will be 4.
This is 4. Okay.
This will be number 4. I've only gone through 3. I told you I talk a lot.
No, it's all good. This is fun.
So, trying to sort of reach through the grab bag of genres, I was trying to find something from one of my favorite genres, horror.
Ooh.
Trying to find examples of a good man doing good things in horror, and at least in a lot of popular horror movies, there are not a lot of good examples because the big tough guy is usually the guy running around stabbing teenagers. So, I was thinking about examples of like male heroes in horror or whatever, and there's Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 with Ash, who's kind of a big noble idiot with a chainsaw hand. There was a movie that came out last year called The Lighthouse, about 2 19th century lighthouse keepers sort of trapped on an island with each other. That is actually kind of a movie about ego and masculinity gone sour when they're trapped in an extreme circumstance. That's an interesting movie to think about right now when we're all in isolation. But the one that kept coming to mind, that I keep coming back to, is one of my favorite movies, and maybe I don't think it's controversial anymore, but I just think it's an American masterpiece. It's The Exorcist from 1973, directed by William Friedkin. And the reason I'm bringing it into the discussion about dude moves, is the character of Father Karras, Father Damien Karras, who was a Jesuit priest, who was also a psychiatrist, who throughout the movie is sort of starting to experience doubts about his faith and about the sort of life that he's devoted himself to, the life that he's chosen for himself. And it only gets worse when his mother dies, and he starts wondering, well, where was God in that? What's the point of all this? What am I doing? And then he gets called in to be sort of the backup priest at this exorcism at the end of the movie. And I don't feel too bad about spoiling a nearly 50-year-old movie if this is a spoiler. But basically, it does not go well for most of the exorcism procedure. You want to call it? Sounds like a outpatient surgery.
So does the word exorcism, but
Well, yeah,
I
it
have a
literally
mole
means
and I need to get it
taking out.
exercised.
So, but at the end of the whole thing, he's kind of Father Karras is kind of the last man standing, and despite all of his doubts, he is the one to look a physical embodiment of literal evil in the eye and say, I don't care what it costs me, I'm going to save this kid. And
that's pretty manly.
he does. And it comes at a huge sacrifice. This massive sacrifice he makes to do the right thing. Because despite his doubts, he stands by the strength of his convictions, and he does what he knows is right. And to me, that's a pretty admirable quality in a person, man or otherwise.
Sure.
It's a good example. Also, yes, the movie is very scary and I think very well made. It's kind of one of the best movies that makes the best use of sound, in my opinion. So if you watch it with headphones.
So that you kind
Because
of get the
it's-
whole effect.
Yeah.
I haven't seen
It's
it
good.
in a long time. Yeah.
It's a movie. Like, I think the controversy around it was like that it was trifling with demonic forces. Sort of.
I don't think it's
Tempting.
affirming them though, or saying
No,
that they're
it's
a good
it's
thing,
basically
obviously, so.
basically it is a movie that says, okay, you want to take demon possession seriously? Let's take it seriously.
Well,
And
I think of this was obviously a director who later made a similar movie, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which was Scott Derrickson, right? I believe. And Scott Derrickson, as a believer, said he was kind of challenged, like, why would you make a movie that's so dark? And he just said, like, sometimes portraying the evil also can point us to the good, and I think that's a valid kind of take. I think I think some people may The Exorcist or The Exorcism of Emily Rose are not movies for everybody, and there's some people that should just stay away from it,
Sure.
But I think that there is value in telling those kinds of stories. So
Denying darkness doesn't make it go away. Hiding from it doesn't make it go away.
right.
It just makes you less prepared for when it finds you.
So, Caleb, you talk about horror movies and guys with a theme of masculinity. Let's see if I can ruin your list.
Ruin my list.
If I'm betting it's on there. I don't know. A Quiet Place. John Krasinski's character.
Oh,
Man.
John Krasinski's character of, I'm here to protect my family at all costs. I will not spoil it because it's still fairly new, and there's a sequel coming out, or prequel, or something. I'm not
It's
sure.
a sequel prequel. It's
Per sequel, but
a sequel with flashbacks.
it's called Part 2, so I'm pretty sure it's
Yeah.
some kind of sequel.
It's a
all I
sequel,
know
but
is
with
that
flashbacks.
there is that driving force of a father to protect his own, which honestly, like, that is super important, and that's something that like we have to think in those, and not even just a father, like, you protect your family at all costs. I mean, Caleb, heck, I know that is why you are staying home right now during COVID-19, because you're protecting your family.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, that's something that is very masculine, and it's something that is embedded in us. So, like, you want to talk about a horror movie that does that. That's a great example. I mean, it's not your... I guess it's a monster movie.
It's a horror movie.
It's a horror
It
movie.
is a horror movie.
It's a horror movie.
So if we need another manly movie in the genre, that's one we could throw out there.
That one specifically, you know, his sort of drive to protect his family. Again, we were talking about, like, no parent is perfect. He makes mistakes. He sort of prioritizes, not, again, trying not to spoil anything, but he sort of prioritizes the protection aspect of fatherhood over some other aspects of fatherhood.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it comes back to bite him a little bit.
Sure.
And, you know, I like characters that are dimensional like that because it makes them feel like real people.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. We don't have a clear golden, you know. We always make mistakes and then we work with them. So yeah, I love that movie. I think it's a great example. What about you, Abe?
I wasn't expecting that.
You got any more on your list of manly movies?
I don't know. I mean, like, there's a lot of movies that you can, like, take manly lessons or, like, things from it that, like, you wouldn't exactly call manly movies.
Okay.
You know? Something off the top of my head is we recently watched that new Pixar movie, The Onward, which the movie is about these two brothers who really want to see their dad who died, and so they're, like, trying to bring back their dad, and, like, along the way they, like, the one kid, he learns, like, lessons about, like, being a man, and it's kind of unexpected because the movie I wouldn't call it a manly movie.
Right, it's a kids movie.
Yeah,
But
it has manly themes and lessons in
It's
it.
very much a family movie. Can anyone guess what I did at the end of that movie?
You cry.
me too. I
If
cried.
you guessed I cried, you're correct. I literally came out of that movie and said out loud, "I love my brothers."
my when I was a little kid, I was probably about I want to say probably about 5 or 6, and my dad watched a movie called, we watched it together, it was called The Champ with Ricky Schroeder.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a boxing movie. Oh,
Yes.
I know I'm going to spoil this. I don't care. The champ dies in the ring. He's dead. He's gone. And my dad loved boxing. He loved boxing movies. So I remember sitting there at 5 or 6 years old and seeing my dad sobbing at the end of this movie. And I'm like, I laughed at him. I thought it was the funniest thing. Honestly, it's the first time I remember seeing my dad cry. Now, I know that, you know, throughout my life, my dad cried a lot, but and there's nothing wrong with that, you know. But so Dad got mad that I was laughing at him. So back in those days, if you wanted to watch a movie, you either went to the theater, you watched it when it was on TV, or you went to the video store where you had to rent a VHS player and the VHS tapes and bring them home and watch it. And a lot of times the VHS tapes, this video store we went to, I swear this guy, like, just pirated all of them. Like, he, like, taped it off of TV or whatever. I don't know. But Dad rented the very next weekend Where the Red Fern Grows, which is a movie about this boy with his 2 coon hounds.
About red ferns and growing.
And the dogs died. And I cried, and I cried. And my dad looked at me and he said, "Son, I want you to remember this. It takes a big man to cry, and it takes an even bigger man to laugh at him." So I learned an important lesson there.
Does that mean that you're the bigger man?
It means that I wasn't, and he was reminding me of that.
But he said it takes a bigger man to laugh at him.
Right. He says, in other words, don't laugh at me when I'm crying unless you're bigger than me.
Ah, okay.
So, anyway, just thought I'd share that little story since we're talking about crying at movies. Caleb, what else is on your list?
So, throughout this whole thing, I've sort of, like I said, tried to find examples of characters who demonstrate aspects of masculinity that should be aspired to, right?
Hmm.
And with this last one, it is perhaps the most important aspect of masculinity that one can aspire to, and that is the ability to sword fight motorcycle riding ninjas whilst riding on a horse.
Yes.
Correct. That is the correct answer.
I have chosen for my final pick John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum from 2019, directed by Chad Stahelski. This is really kind of a vote.
John Wick on a horse!
This is really kind of a vote for the John Wick series as a whole because they're all really great.
They feel like one movie, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they all kind of sort of build on each other, but this is just like pure cinematic joy. These movies, they're extraordinarily violent, like ridiculously, but like it's so over the top that it starts to feel like a cartoon. I can't remember if it was in John Wick 2 or 3, but in one of them early on in the movie, like in the first couple of shots of the movie, the camera's going through Times Square and it briefly focuses on a Buster Keaton movie being projected on the side of a building. And that's what these movies are. They're basically like goofy cartoon action violence for the sake of pure entertainment.
Yeah,
they are entertaining.
I know there's a lot of people that are like, oh, how can you... I don't even know how to describe why we love that stuff.
It's just fun.
But there is this element of fun because, like, character-wise, I mean, let's kind of sum up without any spoilers, but the plot is John Wick is Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves is John Wick. That's the plot. There you go. No, he has lost his wife, so he's got a deep wound, and he's in the process of grieving. His wife's last gift to him was a dog.
To help him cope with the grief. Yes.
And and the other thing she kind of pointed out, basically, because you need something to love other than your car, right? I think was what the letter said.
Is that what
it was something.
I
to
can
that
never
effect.
read text in movies unless it's like.
I think she
subtitles.
reads it. I think she reads it out loud.
Well, then I don't listen to people in movies.
I think it's voiceover.
So he has this dog and this car, and they're the two things in the world that he has left to love. We don't know his backstory at this point, but next thing you know, the Russian mob,
or the children of the Russian mob, just some punk kids, basically.
Yeah, they come in and they kill his dog and they steal his car.
Yeah.
And then we find out that they just did that to the wrong man because John Wick is like a legendary assassin, and
who had retired.
Yeah, he had retired to be with his wife,
and now he's back.
And he's back to get vengeance, and
So here's the thing. In terms of examples of good men, I wouldn't necessarily recommend going on a revenge murder spree under any circumstance.
No.
But it's fun to watch.
I mean, it's fun for the Russian mob, right?
Yeah, I think part of the reason that the movie resonates with men is because, heck, a masculine manly quality is justice. We want to see justice. And
the easiest hook to get someone on a character's side is to kill their dog.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like
how dare you?
So I think the reason,
kill them all, John.
I think the reason that movie resonates with us is because we want to see justice for that cute little puppy. I think it was a beagle, wasn't it? Was it a beagle?
I think it was a beagle, right?
Yeah, we want to see justice for that dog, and we want to see justice for that car, and everybody loves Keanu Reeves. So like, it doesn't matter what he makes, we're all gonna be like, oh, it's the best.
You always want to hug a sad Keanu Reeves.
Here's the thing. For a long time, Keanu Reeves was the butt of a lot of bad actor jokes. And I'm not saying everything he's ever done is perfect. But there is a specific zone that he works in that when he finds directors who know how to get him there, he is the best at it. Directors like Chad Stahelski for these movies or the Wachowskis for The Matrix.
Yeah.
When he's in his element, he is the best person in his element. His physicality is incredible, and his acting, like the emotional scenes he has in these movies, really work. It's just he's really good, and they're really good movies. They're really solid, entertaining, and they sort of build out almost like this underground fantasy world of like an assassin bureaucracy, It's
Yeah, like there's actually a neat kind
so
of
much
sub
fun.
story happening, and all the rules and all that. So like it's not just the glorified violence. Like there's actually a story and there's a world there, and it's interesting. So I'm looking forward to part 4. That was definitely also on my list. So I think you've also hit. We had several crossovers, I think, in our 2 lists of movies.
Yeah, I don't think any of ours crossed over, right? Oh, we
The
did
Rockies.
Rocky.
Yeah, the
Rocky,
Rockies. Yeah, but like that's
The
one that
Rocky
I
Mountains.
definitely was. That was on my list, was the John Wick movies. I think they're a lot of fun. Everybody talked about it for a long time. And I'm like, what is this all about? That doesn't even look interesting to me. And then Isaiah finally talked. Isaiah's my other son. He talked me into watching it. I'm like,
What'd you point at me and say your other son?
he's the cool one. Just kidding. I have no favorites. Caleb, you're my favorite son, and you're not my son.
Caleb, you're my favorite son.
Thanks, dads.
But he finally talked me into watch it, and I watched it. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And then the trailer, it was right before the trailer for 3 came out that we watched the first 2. Then the trailer for 3 comes out, and I go nuts because John Wick is on a horse, and it's like, so here's this awesome character riding a horse through New York City, and it's like, yes, all is right with the world. So definitely, I agree 100%. It's definitely a manly movie, and it resonates. I don't know that there's a grand lesson in it. It's just a movie that we relate to.
Don't mess with John Wick.
That's the lesson. Don't mess with John Wick.
If you happen to come across John Wick, don't steal his car or kill his dog. Those are
Manliest lesson of all
surefire
time.
ways. Those are surefire ways to end up in a bad way.
Definitely. Awesome. So, I think we've hit. Did you have any other movies on your list that you wanted to mention?
Not really.
Awesome. And do you have any honorable mentions or anything else you wanted to mention?
I mean, I don't know. There are examples of movies about how not to be a good man that I think are quite instructive and interesting.
Like The
Movies
Shining.
like, yes, The Shining. The Shining is an example of how to be a very bad father and husband. I think Fight Club gets an interesting reaction from people because it is a satire of sort of like hyper-violent, super tough guy masculinity. But a lot of people took the satire as literal back when it came out,
Yeah, they
and sort of
understand
misinterpreted the whole point of the movie, which is like, hey, punching each other in the face and blowing up buildings doesn't make you more of a man. Another David Fincher movie, The Social Network, I think is interesting about, sort of how not to make friends, especially the friendship between in that movie Mark Zuckerberg and Eduardo Saverin, how it's entirely based on competition with each other instead of like actually enjoying each other's company or like admiring things about each other. Yeah, those are some good ones. But in terms of movies along the theme that I was going for, I will again recommend Bridge of Spies. I think that's a terrific movie. It's a Spielberg movie with Tom Hanks and
Of course it's Tom Hanks. It's always Tom
Mark
Hanks.
Rylance, and it's a really solid movie about good people doing the right thing, even when literally everyone is telling them to, sort of go more with mob justice. So I really appreciate that movie a lot.
Awesome. We'll check it out. So, let's play a game, Caleb. This is how the game works. We played this with Caleb quite a bit, and it's a lot of fun. We just kind of call it the Avengers game because Caleb is, like I said, he's kind of the film buff, the guy that knows like just about everything there is to know about movies. Also, randomly memorizes everybody's birthday, which is also weird. But it's his superpower. But what we do is we pick a movie, and then Caleb thinks about it for a second, and then uses that movie and the people that either star or the cast and crew or directed. He kind of uses that circle of people to connect it to other movies all the way back to the Avengers. So sometimes it's 1-to-1, sometimes it's 3 or 4 steps, and he gets us to the Avengers.
It's
and
like the Kevin Bacon thing.
It's kind of like Kevin Bacon, only we don't have to have just 6 degrees. There can be as many degrees as we need. But so let's see what we can do. Let's maybe start with some of the movies that we mentioned. So Abe, why don't you, of the movies we mentioned, pick one, and we'll see how long it takes Caleb, how many steps it takes Caleb to connect it to the Avengers.
How about Forrest Gump?
Okay. Forrest Gump was written by Eric Roth, who also co-wrote A Star is Born, which was directed by Bradley Cooper, who played Rocket Raccoon in Guardians of the Galaxy, and also in Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame, which co-starred all of the Avengers from the Avengers.
There we go. Okay, so how about the movie Warrior? So that was our first one on the list. Let's connect the Warrior with the Avengers.
Okay. Warrior. All right. All right. Warrior was the cinematographer of Warrior was Masanobu Takayanagi, who also shot Spotlight, which featured Rachel McAdams, who was in Doctor Strange with Benedict Cumberbatch, who played Doctor Strange in Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, which also featured the entire cast of Avengers.
Spotlight had Mark Ruffalo as well, right? So
Mark Ruffalo and Michael Keaton, who was in Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah, so we've got those
I
connections.
mean, Mark Ruffalo would be quicker.
That's awesome, though. Okay, so...
That's true. Mark Ruffalo would be quicker, yeah.
All right, so let's go with one more then. Or let me do a couple more. Let's go with John Wick 3. Let's connect John Wick 3. Is that Parabellum?
Yeah.
John Wick 3 Parabellum. How many steps does it take us to get from there to the Avengers?
Oh boy. Okay. So, in John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum, Lawrence Fishburne plays a character that I call the Pigeon King. He's actually officially called the Bowery King, but I refuse to call him that because he's the Pigeon King. He's the king of the pigeons. Lawrence Fishburne also is in Ant-Man and the Wasp, featuring Paul Rudd, who's in Avengers Endgame, which features all of the characters from the Avengers.
Awesome. The Pigeon King. I love it. All right, let's do one more. Let's go way back then. I almost want Rocky, but that's easy because then you've got Creed and
Sylvester Stallone is in Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
Oh, he is.
He is, yeah.
So you've got Michael B. Jordan, and so we're not even going to go Rocky movies. That's too easy. Let's go hard here. Let's go A Quiet Place.
This is not a connection, but it's interesting. Emily Blunt was originally cast as Black Widow in Iron Man 2, but she had to back out because of scheduling conflicts with a movie that nobody remembers, based on, what is that, Gulliver's Travels? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
This is the Jack Black version.
Oh, I remember that movie. Am I the only one who remembers that movie?
Abe has
So we could have
obsession with Jack Black. So
we could have had an entirely different Black Widow if it hadn't been for Gulliver's Travels.
I know there's rumors that the next phase of Marvel may include John Krasinski, so that might be an easier connection down the road.
John Krasinski actually screen tested for Captain America. He was close. He was like in the last 2 or 3 people.
He does not look like Captain America, though.
It's the nose, man. It's the nose.
He's got kind of like the chin that like sticks out in a bad way.
Have you seen him and Jack Ryan though?
I haven't seen it yet. It looks awesome.
He's freaking huge. Like he was still all jacked
huge
for
in A Quiet Place.
He was still all jacked for that show when he was doing A Quiet Place. So I remember somebody reviewing the movie was like, the 5th member of the family is John Krasinski's huge neck. Okay.
So we're looking at A Quiet Place to the Avengers, right?
Okay. Quiet Place. In A Quiet Place, the son is played by an actor named Noah Jupe, who was in. Shoot, I lost it. Hang on. Where's the Noah Jupe connection?
I want to see that movie. The Noah Jupe connection.
The Noah Jupe connection.
I just think the fact that Caleb, the fact that Caleb like knows that the little boy's name is Noah Jupe is just as impressive as whatever connection he's making. I'm like, how does he remember that stuff?
Someday we'll find it. The Noah Jupe connection.
Oh. I got it. It wasn't Noah Jupe. It wasn't a Noah Jupe connection. That was one of the first routes I tried to go down, but I didn't. Okay. So, A Quiet Place. The cinematographer in A Quiet Place was Charlotta Bruce Christensen, who also shot Molly's Game, written and directed by Aaron Sorkin, who wrote The Social Network, which was directed by David Fincher, who also directed Zodiac, featuring Mark Ruffalo, who plays the Hulk in the Avengers.
I love Zodiac. That's a good movie.
That is a good movie. Hey, this was a lot of fun.
It was fun.
Super fun. Funny times.
I think
it's fun to see you guys.
it was. We definitely missed not being all together and having the real life connections that we get to have. I think
Noah Jupe connections.
the Noah Jupe connections.
The real Noah Jupe connections.
I do think we should do some more podcast episodes in the future. I think the two of you guys should do your own just generally pop culture movie podcast. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
That's something we could do, yeah.
That'd be cool.
So any of my tools that I can use to help you guys get it out there, I'm definitely willing to do. So
Screwdriver. I could help. You said tools.
oh, right.
Bandsaw.
Push saw, circular saw.
You know what I'm saying.
Bone
Anyway,
saw.
bone
Walnut.
saw is ready.
3 minutes of playtime.
Anyway, guys, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you guys hanging out with
Absolutely.
me for the Manlihood ManCast, and we'll be in touch again soon, guys. Thanks.
3, 2, 1.
So here's where reality creeps into the podcast. My lunch just got here, so I'm gonna nom down.
Eat it. What are you eating?
I got some Burger King.
Ooh, King of Burgers.
Got some nuggets.
It's a good thing I'm wearing a black shirt, because whenever I record anything, my pits get super sweaty.
Specifically my right. My right
Yeah,
foot.
it's the right pit. I don't know what it is about the right pit, and it's like a little bit on my lumbar, like my lower back.
Oh, I've had like this weird.
I'm
like,
really glad that at least one camera is capturing this, because I'm totally putting that in the
Oh,
outtakes at the end.
I've had this weird like lower back like overheat and sweat the last couple of days, and I'm like, do I have a fever? Like, is this COVID? Does COVID manifest in my
Lumbar
lower
sweats.
back region? Yeah. But I checked my temperature, and my temperature was literally like 98.6 every time I've taken it
But
the last
did you
couple
check
of
your
days.
temperature on your lumbar?
It's specifically the skin over my lower back has COVID-19.
We'll let Caleb chew there for a second, and then we'll...
I don't notice, but you have like very blonde eyebrows. It's like they're almost white.